Hi everybody, John here again, and thanks for joining me for yet another Allan Holdsworth lesson video as part of my syntax series. And today I wanted to talk about the dominant plague, and hopefully this will be a pretty short video because there's really not that much to talk about. One of the things I do want to talk about is this is another piece that switches from fifths to standard, but I think earlier this year, maybe late last year, I had put out a video about the syntax, and I played a little bit of the dominant plague. And I played it in standard, and I believe now that part is in fifth. So I thought maybe after I teach the fifth section, or when I'm done teaching the entire piece, I'll talk about how I ended up switching it to from standard to fifths, and what gave me that idea, and sort of the reason why sometimes transcribing some of the syntax tunes are pretty challenging because you have so many different options, and since a lot of these tunes were never played live, you have to really go by sort of what makes logical sense. So I'll talk about that at the end. So anyway, here's a little bit about the dominant plague. The dominant plague was most likely written in 1985 because Allan had said that he had held off writing any new material until he got his hands on the syntax, and that was sometime in March of 1985. So I would assume that it was written around that time and also recorded for Atavachron in that same year, sometime between, I guess, April and October. Now, the name The Dominant Plague is sort of like a tongue-in-cheek kind of thing because Allan has stated that he's really not a fan of dominant chords, or more specifically altered dominant chords. Here's a quote that he had given when he was talking to Neville Martin of Guitar Magazine about what he doesn't like about altered dominant chords. And in my history of transcribing some of Allan's material, I really haven't found a lot of times where he used a straight altered dominant chord. He usually plays dominant chords, but more like a dominant 11 or like a 7th chord with an added 11 in it. But for the most part, they're pretty uncommon in his playing, so I think this is a tongue-in-cheek kind of thing about the overuses of a dominant chord or dominant progressions in jazz or just music in general. And we'll see through the fifths tuning section how Allan sort of uses all these different dominant and altered dominant chords in a kind of unconventional kind of way. This tune features a keyboard solo from Allan's old friend from the Tony Williams lifetime days, Alan Pasqua, who also played other solos on the album. Again, I had mentioned last time that Kai Akagi was supposed to play keyboards on the Atavachron album, but since he couldn't for whatever reason, he got Billy Childs and Alan Pasqua to add keyboards and play solos on pretty much each track. It also features a solo by Jimmy Johnson, which is great, and there's not too many Allan tunes that actually have a distinct bass solo, but Jimmy Johnson gets a pretty significant one at the end. And of course, Allan plays a solo himself on regular guitar. Again, saying on the Atavachron album, only All Our Yesterdays and Non-Brew Condiment actually have a syntax solo. And I think all the acoustic drums, I think, were done by Gary Husband on Atavachron. So Chad Wackerman only plays electronic drums on this track and also on All Our Yesterdays. This track was never performed live, and I think part of the reason why it was never performed live is how you actually have to use the syntax in order to play it. So in this next section where I talk about the sounds that are used for the dominant plague, I'll touch upon why I think it wasn't performed live. So here's some information about the sounds used for this track. Again, the sounds that I'll be using have all been created by Luigi Masella, so thank you again, because without those sounds I wouldn't be able to demonstrate these pieces as accurately as I can. So the dominant plague has two main sections. It has an A section and a B section. Now Allan has said that when he got the syntax, he had already purchased the Oberheim expander. He also might have been using a Matrix 12 at this time, I don't know, but both A and B sections, I believe, are an Oberheim kind of sound. Now that A section, they have two different, distinctly different sort of timbres to them. And the A section almost sounds like this kind of brass or organ sound. A lot of times Allan sounds, it's like somewhere in the middle between two different instruments, and it's hard to sort of pick what it really is. But it kind of sounds like either, depending on, you know, how your ear is tuned. But I know the Oberheims are known for their brass sound. So the A section is sort of that brassy, organy kind of sound. And then the B section, I believe Allan is reusing the same patch that he used for Looking Glass and Non-Brute Condiment, that kind of like marimba, plucky kind of sound. But like Looking Glass, Allan's also blending it with another sound, and I believe he's actually using a DX7 or TX7 tubular bell sound, and I think this is the sound that that tubular bell sound is the patch that Allan has used the most, because I believe I found it on like a bunch of different tracks, like on Secrets and Spokes and Watercliff Tower, Sand. They all have this sort of bell-like sound, and I believe it's because of how Allan puts sounds together with the syntax. He always has some sort of percussive-y kind of sound, so in this case that would be that bell kind of sound, and then something with a long sustain underneath it, like this sort of marimba or even electric piano kind of sound, or a string sound. So he'll often blend these two things together. And the way that I've been doing these videos, I've been trying to do them using the simplest sort of sounds that Allan used until they start getting more complicated, like on Sand or the Secrets record. Allan starts blending more sounds together, but in the beginning they're usually simpler. So the A section is this Oberheim brassy kind of sound, and the B section is that same sort of marimba sound on Looking Glass and Non-Brute Condiment with a bell sound blended inward. Now, as I was saying, I think the reason why Allan didn't perform this piece live for some of these other pieces is because he's basically using two sounds at once. If you had two different keyboards producing two different sounds, you'd have to mix them through a mixer. So I think when Allan started playing with Steve Hunt or another keyboard player, it's easier to split the parts together. Like I had mentioned for Looking Glass, Allan played the marimba-y kind of sound, and Kayakagi or Steve Hunt would play the string sound. But for something like this, for especially that B section, I don't know if you could blend these two parts together properly. Anyway, that's just a suggestion. But also, there's a chord that switches from fifths to standard, and you'll even hear on the track there's like a little bit of a delay in the sound before the patch sort of kicks in. And they've talked about that with the syntax, how sometimes the syntax can send a patch change message to the synth that you're using, but it might not change right away. Sometimes you have to like wait for it. So I think these are some of the reasons why Allan didn't perform it live, whereas the pieces that we've done before that switch sounds and tunings, there's sometimes a little bit of a break between them. It's not an immediate thing. So anyway, that's a little bit of some information on the sounds that Allan used. Let's get down to actually playing it. Alright, like I said before, the Dominant Plague really has two sections to it. It has an A section and a B section. And this A section is tuned in fifths with that organy brass kind of sound. So the tuning is always the same in fifths. It's F, C, G, D, A, and E. And also Allan's using the trigger strings, I believe here, not the actual keys, because it just makes sense how to play it. So a lot of the early syntax stuff uses the trigger strings, but I think later on he mostly started using the keys. And then towards the end he started using the trigger strings again with a lot of the electric piano patch stuff that he would play. So a majority of this piece, of this A section, is really built around this ninth type of chord sound, whether it's a flat 9, 9, or sharp 9, all dominants. So for example, if I play this chord here, this is an F9 chord, because we have our F, or root, the major third, the flat 7, the major third being A, the flat 7 being E flat, and then finally my first finger is a G, so that's playing the 9. And basically Allan's just using that G as a pivot point and moving the bottom three notes to different places. So for example, if I move my second, third, and fourth finger up a half step, now what happens is I have an F sharp dominant 7, but now I have a G here, so this is now a 7 flat 9, back to this F9, and then if I move my three fingers down a half step to E7, now that G is a sharp 9. So 7 sharp 9, 9, 7 flat 9. And that's pretty much the motif of that main section, this main A section. So this first part I thought was bass until Luigi sent me the patch over and I was able to listen to it. and it's clearly played on the syntax, and it only happens in the beginning. Every time afterwards when the chords repeat, this part is never played. So it was hard to tell what the rhythm here is because it just starts, but I believe it starts on 1 and. So it's just F, and the other notes would be G, A, D, and back to G. So I think the rhythm is 1 and 2, 3, 4, and 1 and 2, and then you're just playing G to A, and then the fifth, which is D here, and then your first finger's playing that G again, and then you're going F, F, and that F, F is the beginning of the chord section. So that little intro only happens at that point. It never doesn't happen anywhere else in the song, so or the tune. So it sounds like this: 1, 2, 3, 4. And well, I'll talk about a little bit later how I sort of confuse this this part being in standard because of all the different things that you can do with the syntax. You're playing this F and it's ringing out, which you could do if you were just playing a key. I could just hold it down and play a bunch of other things. So I think that's what I thought was happening at first, but really it's just this F being rung out because there are other chords that are being played on top of it. You have this G sus2, and then it goes to an F sus2, and then it goes to this weird chord. You have an F sharp C, and an F, while there's an F in the bass. I don't really know how to name this, but because that top part of the chord is so similar to our 7 sharp 9, I'm thinking maybe Alan was thinking of this as a D7 sharp 9, just without the a D in there, without this root. I don't know. I don't even know what to really name it, but that's what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking as by the shape. So we have. I'll start from the beginning. And then it goes into our first real chord, which is a C9. Again, it's the same shape that we did before. And then it moves down a half step, but our first finger moves down a half step as well. So now this is a B7 flat 9. The bottom, my second, third, and fourth finger move down a half step to now B flat. So this is a B flat 9. And then that moves down again to an A7. All while that I'm playing the, I guess it's the B flat on the top. Oh no, it's sharp 9, so it would be a C on top. So that part sounds like this. And then it repeats the same motif again with the 2 Fs, the sus2s. But now it goes to this chord here, and this is a A7 flat 9. And then Alan moves his 3 fingers down to G7, so now this is a G7 sharp 9. And then those 3 fingers move up a half step to now this is a G sharp, I believe, yeah, G sharp 9 chord. So that whole part would sound like this. Same motif again. But now, instead of playing one of those 9th chords, Alan plays a B flat major 7 sharp 11. And we've seen Alan play this voicing already a bunch of times, not only in regular standard tuning, like in a Tavachron, like this would be just D major, but also in non-brute condiment. This is the same voicing that he uses. And then that moves to a, it's always confusing trying to do this, to a B7 sharp 9. And then the B goes to C7, so this is a C9. And then it moves up a half step to C sharp 7 flat 9. So those 2 Fs again. But now it's a little bit different. Now it goes to a E flat major 7 sharp 11. Then it goes back to B flat, but now, E flat major 7 sharp 11, I don't remember if I said that. But now it goes to regular B flat major 7. So it's what's happening is we're playing the root, the major third, the major seventh, but instead of playing the sharp 11 here, we're moving it up a half step, which is now the fifth. And then the middle two notes move down a half step, so now it's a B flat minor 7. And now the bottom three notes move down a half step while you're still playing the note on the top. So now this is an A minor 7, but with the flat 13. And then you're playing the top four notes descending. Like that while that's ringing out. And then that modulates all the way up to F. We get the same thing. F major 7, F minor 7, E flat minor 7 with the flat 13. And then this is what I was saying before about the why it couldn't be played live, because at that moment, Allan changes the patch to standard. If I go to the next one here, it's an E flat major 7. But what happens is, I'll play it here before, right afterwards. But it's like the patch, the tuning changes, and then the patch change happens right after. So listen for it. Now, mine can't do this, but I don't think it's because of the syntax problems that I might be experiencing or anything. I think it's just how my setup is. But what should be happening is, as I play this chord, see how it stops? On the record, it doesn't stop, and I know that the syntax has this capability because if you watch the, I'll insert it here, if you watch the instruction, well, not the instructional, but I guess the sales video for it, you'll see that Neville Martin plays a chord and presses the octave up and down buttons, and the pitch changes with it. It doesn't stop. So that's what should be happening there, but for whatever reason it sends a MIDI off note, so I can't play the sound immediately. And even if I did, it wouldn't catch up. You'd have to probably be something that this is something that has to be done probably with a real synth. So that's the whole A section, and now I'm going to go to the B section. Again, this B section is relatively straightforward, and actually the chords themselves are very simple, and this was probably the hardest to figure out. Even when I was transcribing it, this was the section I had the hardest difficulty with trying to figure out, because I find that more complex chords are easier to figure out because there are more notes that you can kind of pick out, but when you have simpler, more consonant chords, getting the exact voicing is really tough, and especially when you're using a keyboard sound or a synth with all these different things, it's really hard to separate if I'm hearing an overtone or what really is the bass note. And even with that other part, I had a lot of difficulty figuring out the voicing because that brass sound is there's so much stuff going on in there. Everything just sounds so like congested. But I'll talk about that in the next section. I was able to sort of figure it out. Anyway, so the B section starts. Remember, it's now in standard tuning, E, A, D, G, B, E. And you can hear that there's that that kind of marimba sound, but now I have that tubular bell mixed in. And that's another thing, what I was saying before, is Allan has all of these sounds mixed slightly differently. Sometimes that bell sound is a little bit louder, or the other synth is a little bit louder. And if you were performing these live, you'd have to actually manually move those the levels, whereas here I have it set as a preset, so once it gets to that sound it already has the levels set how I think they go. So some of the benefits of modern technology. Alright, so this section is actually really simple. It's almost all regular major and minor chords. So the first chord, it's only one's a little bit different. There's some chords in here that are 6, but it's an E flat, and then Allan plays the 6 on the top. And if you look again with this voicing, it's just like the major 7 sharp 11 voicing that we did before. Again, just reusing the same shapes in different tunings. So E flat with the 6 on top, and a lot of times when Allan repeats this, he doesn't always play that 6. Sometimes he just plays the regular octave, the E flat in there. Also, when he's playing, it's possible that both sounds are separate, so he's not playing the marimba sound and the bell sound at the same time. He might be playing them on separate tracks and then blending them together afterwards. I just wanted to point that out. So E flat with the 6, D flat, same chord, a whole step down, and then a first inversion A flat major triad, like that, and then it goes to G flat major, and then it goes to D flat major. And this is one of Allan's favorite major and minor voicings that I've shown before, like in the Metal Fatigue and Things You See. Very common in Allan's playing. So the first part, the second time it's almost identical, but now there's no 6 on the top. But now instead of going to G flat, it goes to A flat with the 6 on the top, and now B flat major 7. And of course we've seen this voicing plenty of times. It's also in The Things You See. Now that part gets modulated up a whole step, so now instead of playing it in A flat major, it's now in B flat major. So F major, E flat major, first inversion B flat major, and then B flat with the 6, and then F minor. A little bit of a difference there. Now it goes to F minor. Then that modulates up again, and now it goes to G major, F major, C major. Now this chord is the one that I had the most difficulty trying to figure out. It's the one that I'm the least confident in, but I'm pretty sure I'm right, because I've never really seen Allan play a regular minor chord with the 5th in the bass like we did the major chords, but I think it's just D minor. It's the only thing that makes sense to me sonically and physically. And then it ends with A major, the same major voicing that we played before. So this is what that whole thing sounds like. And that's it. That's the B section. The only things that are really different is on one particular voicing when Allan's playing his solo, when he goes to the E major, the C major, instead of playing like this, I think Allan also plays the E on the top like this. Does that once in a while, especially in like The Things You See. And instead of going to a regular, at the very end, A major, I think on one of the times he plays A major add 9, just for like one particular voicing. But the problem is each time that's played it's different. Now the structure of the song is kind of interesting because the A in the beginning of the tune, when it's just the chords by themselves, it's the A section once and the B section is twice. Then the next solo is Allan Pasqua, and now the A section is once and the B section is twice. And then that's the same for Allan. It's the A section once and the B section twice. And then when Jimmy Johnson plays, he only plays over the B sections, just the B section twice. And the only difference is at the very, very end of the tune. It's the E flat. It's a D flat, but now it goes to A flat add 9. Whoops. And that's just how it ends. So that's really the whole piece. Like I said, is pretty simple. So let me just do a quick playthrough, and then at the end I'll show you how I switched it from standard to fifths. So when I first transcribed that A section, there was really no indication that it could have been in fifths. There were no notes that went way too low or sounded like they went really low. So I started out with just regular standard, because we have ninth chords and 7 flat nines and 7 sharp nines, which are all pretty common regular standard guitar chords. But I thought, okay, that F that's being rung out, instead of it being an open string, you can just do that on the syntax just by playing the note. So if I fretted the first fret, I could play it and hold the note out, and then just play the other chords, with my other fingers. And that's something that Allan certainly could have done. But then once I got that sound, and I thought, oh, the lowest note, and then you have this, that's such a guitar lick. And the fact that it went from D to G, it's like, that doesn't make sense if you were to play it, with the first fret like this, and then G, G, A, D, G, F, like that. It just physically doesn't make sense. And then I went, well, then the next two chords are definitely sus2 chords, and standard tuning, they look, like this. So so I'm holding that note out and then playing those two, and well, that doesn't make sense. I think you could also play it like down here, so I played it here, and even those weird notes, the F sharp, C, and the F, I was playing over here, F sharp, C, and F, and that all made sense. But then I went, well, if they're sus2 chords in fifths are really easy because they're just bars, and then that. And then once I did that part, I tried to figure out what all the other things were. Like, okay, well then that's a 7th chord. How do I play like a 7th chord or a dominant 9? And again, it was really hard to tell the order of each of the notes. I had to go by, okay, what am I hearing? What's the highest note? What's the lowest note? And I was using frequency, the spectrum analysis, trying to figure out what all the notes could possibly be. And then once I sort of got around to, actually, it was a while ago, so I'm trying to remember, I knew that those major 7 sharp 11 chords could be played like this in regular standard tuning, but I know that Allan also really likes to play them like this, like a regular bar chord. And then the ending part, the one with the major 7, minor 7, minor 7, flat 5, the minor 7, the flat 13, said, oh, well, that could also be done in standard guitar. But then once I started to think about it in fifths, I said, well, how would you actually be able to play that? And then I got this voicing, and then said, well, I know going from major 7 to minor 7 is very simple. And then even the bottom part, how it moves down, it's just these notes are moving down while that's staying up. I said, oh, that's pretty easy. And then the other issue that I had was my ear was not hearing. It sounded like this to me. So once I got that voicing and said, oh, that note that my ear is hearing higher up, so in this case it would be C, F, G. I don't know what that note would be. I'm in fifths tuning. Once I said, oh, that what did I say this was? F. Once this G could be down here, I said, oh, and then if that's actually a G, then this I think would be C. Yeah, because that's an octave. I said, oh, that makes a lot of sense because your fingers are still there. And then, okay, well, I know that gets moved up a fifth. And then that next chord is an E flat major 7, and when I looked at it, I said, oh, all those notes are right there. You have your E flat, you have the major 7, you have the major 3rd, and then you're just repeating that here. So I said, oh, this has to be it. And then once I got the beginning and the end, I kind of worked myself into the middle and said, well, what about some of those other chords? And said, oh, you know what, here's a 7th with the 9, and that makes sense that he's basically using the 9 as a pivot point. That, with all those chords, oh, that's what makes sense. So at first, like I said, it's kind of hard because if I played it like this, it's not going to sound right with the keys. Kind of sounds the same, right? It's really hard to tell. So it took a little bit of sort of thinking outside the box, and again, it really helps having my sort of knowledge of other tunes that I've transcribed to go, oh, that major 7 sharp 11, I know Allan uses that voicing a lot. And even like that major 7 to minor 7, I know that that's relatively easy in fifths tuning. It was all that other stuff. So transcribing material gets easier when you have a database to pull from. If this was the first song of his, first tune I had to transcribe, I never would have gotten it. But since I had all those years, it made it easier. So just wanted to talk about that. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys soon.